Hello guys. Putin cannot control Syria. Putin cannot control Ukraine. Putin cannot control Moldova. And Putin cannot control Russia as the Ukrainian Armed Forces advance in Kursk region. These recent months have illustrated how weak his regime actually is, and more countries that were formerly considered the Russian zone of influence demonstrate they are not afraid of Putin and they are prepared to change. For example, the Prime Minister of Moldova speaks about the need to return Transnistria back. And Transnistria is another quasi-republic created with the help of the Russian money and Russian troops. But as all of the former republics and former countries that suffered from the Kremlin sense this weakness, they signal to the world it's time to end Putin's regime. And I hope that President Trump and EU leaders understand Russia is a classical bully and classical bullies collapse really quickly. My name is Anna, I'm from Ukraine, I'm in Ukraine, and if you want to see the defeat and demilitarization of Russia, Putin in The Hague, and also protect yourself against the hybrid warfare, subscribe. We discuss all of that on the channel. And we discuss all of that on the channel when Ukrainian armed forces continue their advances in Kursk region. And this is important not just because it's a good argument if any future negotiations appear, but also as an illustration of Russian weakness, vulnerability, and all after almost half a year since the start of Kursk Offensive. So what does it tell us? There is nothing Russia can do. They have asked North Korean soldiers to help them, and Kim Jong-un sent thousands, and it did not work out. Putin promised his people a number of times that Kursk will return under the Russian control by, and he changed these dates. In his recent address to the people on the New Year Eve, he promised this will happen by Christmas. I wonder which Christmas. And please remember that whether it's possible or not, but the whole world is waiting for the inauguration of the new US President Donald Trump, who promised to end this war really quickly and potentially push for negotiations. So Putin dreamt to start these negotiations from the positions of power. And he's definitely not in one, as more and more countries that were formerly considered the zone of the Kremlin's influence. I actually hate this idea. But more of such countries, even former Soviet republics, demonstrate Putin is a bully, we are not afraid of him, and we will actually make him do what we want. That is exactly what the President of Azerbaijan, Ilham Aliyev, says. You know that Russia is responsible for another crime, similar to an awful situation with MH17 when they killed 300 people. And they repeated that with Azerbaijani airplane, shooting it with air defense, totally unprofessionally, unable to see the difference between the drone and the civilian aircraft, and most importantly, not closing the skies in the time when air defense works. A reminder, in Ukraine, we don't have civilian aircraft in the skies. And with all that, Putin decided to go further and make this crime worse. He did not let the damaged plane land in Chechnya, and Russians ordered Azerbaijani plane to continue flying despite the damage and land in Kazakhstan. They hoped it would collapse in the Sea of Caspian, but it survived, and many died once again because Russia wanted to hide its crime. And the president of Azerbaijan did not accept fake apologies of Putin and now demands that Russian people responsible for shooting the civilian aircraft must be responsible. They must pay and must be prosecuted for that crime. And we are all waiting. Subscribe to see many trials, especially the one with Putin in the center of its focus in The Hague. And it's important. And it is something we could not imagine 3 or 4 years before, when Putin still was respected by many of Central Asian republics leaders who sympathize authoritarian regimes and so on. But now they clearly see that not only Putin is crazy, but he is also losing power and he is humiliated. Another good update is that Russian submarines, all of the Russian submarines left Syrian port Tartus. And this is a great geopolitical loss, and not just of Syria, but of all the Mediterranean territory and partially Africa. And Russia wanted this influence to play in the United Nations with the voices and votings. And in Africa, they commit crimes stealing natural resources of these countries. Of course, they don't care for the people. They care for the resources, diamonds, rubies, I don't know, anything they can get from these lands. Because the only kind of economy Russia knows is actually dig and sell. And now all of their submarines escaped from the port of Tartus in Syria, which is a good reminder. And also two of their ships that were meant to evacuate people from Syria and equipment from Syria, Ursa Major, sank because it's a Russian scrap metal, and Sparta is drifting, so it's total failure. And what made me feel especially optimistic is the words of the Prime Minister of Moldova. You know that during the recent elections in Moldova, Russia did everything to interfere and to substitute the results, but the people of Moldova proved their pro-European choice. And Russia keeps shaking this country, first of all, with this fake republic of Transnistria, another fake quasi-republic like DPR, LPR in Ukraine, or Ossetia and Abkhazia in Georgia. And Russia uses such fake republics, totally funded by Russian money and backed by Russian soldiers and Russian tanks, to cause troubles and not to let these countries develop and join the democratic world, what we all choose. And right now, as Ukraine ended the transit of Russian gas, Russia typically gave gas for free to Transnistria. They always give something to take more. And Moldova and European countries are ready to back up people in Transnistria because they are Moldovan. But the rulers of Transnistria, said by Russia, cannot accept that. And I'm actually happy that more and more leaders sense this weakness of the Kremlin, and they claim all of these lands must return to their legitimate countries, legitimate governments, as it will happen with Donetsk, Luhansk, and Crimea in Ukraine. It will happen in Georgia with South Ossetia and Abkhazia, and it will happen in Moldova with Transnistria. Just have a look at how many troubles, how many tragedies Russia brought to these lands, and there is no way and no influence and no appeasement plan that we can accept, knowing centuries of these troubles brought from Moscow. Let me know, did you watch the interview of President Zelensky with Lex Fridman? Because I have different thoughts about that. And I'm actually interested, do you consider that an important event? And what is your opinion on that? Let me know in the comments below. And remember to remind those who still sense and who still believe there are zones of influence and Russia is a strong bear. This bear is not a bear at all. It's a paper tiger or a paper mouse that loses the grip, and no Syria, no Ukraine, no Georgia, no Moldova, no Azerbaijan, no Armenia, no one respects Putin. We all see his fear, weakness, and classical bully behavior. And you know, bullies collapse really quickly when encountered with serious force, resilience, and determination. And I know we all have that. Please follow me on Blue Sky. Our community is 7,000 people already there. I'm very grateful. I'm fighting on X. We need strong voices there. Follow me on Instagram, and we have a kind and beautiful Discord community. Check the merch shop for lots of good items that work well as reminders and conversation starters about Ukraine, and all the links that you need are in the description of this video. Thank you for buying me coffees, becoming my patrons and sponsors of the channel, but most importantly, thank you for standing with Ukraine. Slava Ukraini!